God, how many times have I done a meeting?
It's been a while, in all honesty. I thought Donna and Danielle were coming to put out the name tags, so I didn't do it.
And
I know, is anybody taking minutes?
and who's taking minutes?
Danielle's on here.
Do
Oh.
you want me to put them out right now?
I think we're fine.
What if someone doesn't know me? All right, we're good. All right, everyone, welcome. It's Wednesday, October 13th, and we are having a hybrid meeting, half in Zoom here, and we have some people in public attendance. The public can attend virtually too, and we're having this virtual hybrid meeting as in accordance with an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 restrictions until April 1st, 2020, which suspends certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 304, Section 2020. So I'm going to call the meeting to order, and all those who are able, please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're going to start with committee comments, if anyone has one. Mr. Pastor, do you want to start?
Thank you. Really, the only comment I have is please go out and vote. Regardless of the side of the aisle you're on, please realize that voting is the most important thing you can possibly do, whether it's local or national election. From my opinion, I really hope that you look at both sides of the discussion and you vote yes. That's it.
Maggie, do you have a comment, a public announcement, or any comments?
Yes, so I would like to speak on behalf of the student representatives. I would like to first touch upon pool testing. So I think we've been doing this for a couple of weeks now, and I can say from my own personal experience that it's been very nice to have, others besides me who I know who are either positive or negative for COVID. I believe I was in art class one day, and there was a student who had COVID, got taken out of class. The whole thing was very, very professional, very low-key. Everything was taken care of very swiftly. And I would just like to say on behalf of the student body, I very, very much appreciate the pool testing. I think it's working out very, very well. And I'm signed up for it myself.
Yay.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
I was talking with Ms. Mulcahy earlier today because we were talking about pool testing and requiring it, and just if we're going to change our policy and things like that. And do you have any ideas how to encourage people who aren't enrolled in doing that to get other students enrolled? Is there a way the students can help with getting other students enrolled?
Yeah,
or encouraging them?
I would say generally it's most important to educate the students on the benefits of pool testing. I would say from my personal experience, I found that students who aren't signed up for pool testing don't think that it's important. They're also the same students that typically don't wear their masks that much, so I think it's kind of like an all-around education of the importance of pool testing and the importance of stopping the spread of COVID as much as possible.
So I agree with you. I was just sort of curious if there was a place in the day for that kind of education, or if there's a way to reach students, like some sort of video or some sort of YouTube thing that, I don't know, is there a way we can encourage more people? Because I think unless we have a certain percentage doing it, right, and we're enforcing this and we're mitigating all these COVID things a bunch of different ways, it's not as effective.
Right, yeah.
Right? So
yeah, for sure. Well, I know that we have learning community, and especially on Mondays and Fridays, there's definitely an open chance where students can't go to other classes and they have to stay in their homerooms to focus on, communal activities with other students. And I think that would be a good time for homeroom teachers to take a bit of initiative and start talking about the importance of pool testing.
Maybe we can find some good educational, relevant video or something that speaks to
for sure.
students sort of asking their parents to fill that paperwork out or get it done, because the more people that take advantage of it, the more the more likely we are to keep kids in school. Like you said, someone was positive in your art class. In the past, that would have meant, you know, the whole art class going into quarantine, right, for being a close contact or something. And now we don't have to do that. If you're enrolled in the pool testing and we're, you know, doing the stuff right, we don't have to have you go home and lose out on time on learning and all those things. So it just feels like this is such an important, like, it's so nice to hear you appreciate that, understand it. It's just great. I'm psyched. All right, thanks. Madison, do you want to have a committee announcement?
Sure. Can everyone hear me? Or is...
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So going off of what Maggie had said, focusing on more of the senior class part of the student body, Maggie and I are both seniors, and our elective science class, Green Scholars, is going to be doing a beach cleanup next Thursday during the class period, and it's just a great way to show that we're focusing on our beaches and keeping our community clean, and that's just something that we've been working on as part of Green Scholars, and working on trying to keep the community clean and green itself. And also for seniors, early action and early decision deadlines are approaching very, very quickly, November 1st. So our guidance department, all of our counselors, Ms. Sturma, Ms. Mazzola, and Ms. Barnum have been doing a tremendous job helping the student body for the senior class prepare by holding X-Block sessions, helping students with anything they need regarding their Common App and Naviance accounts, and then scheduling meetings to help with that. So things are going very well in that department as well. Thank you.
I gotta imagine your stress levels through the roof.
Can I just ask a question? What beach are you guys going to be cleaning?
It's going to be Fisherman's Beach.
Great.
Great.
Thank you.
Ms. Marshall?
I don't have anything specific, but I do want to echo what Glenn said about voting. You know, the time is here, so it's time for everybody to get out and do the right thing.
Thanks. And Mr. Gigantis?
Just a quick shout out to the boosters, the sports boosters. The last few weeks they've been very, very busy with the various sports like cheer, football, soccer, golf,
Field hockey.
So thank you for their efforts, and thank you for the town for supporting those efforts. That's it.
All right, great. So with that, public comment is on the agenda for the end of the meeting, so we're going to hold off on that, and we're just going to move right to the superintendent's report.
Thank you. So tonight, I don't have a written report, but there are lots of links on the agenda. So I will likely post the agenda for people in the community that would like to link to the presentations tonight and also link to the documents I'll be sharing. The first item on the agenda, I'm going to go here and then I'll close, is one of my greatest pleasures, and that is to recognize students for their accomplishments. And every year annually, we recognize, well, the Massachusetts Association for School Superintendents recognizes a student with a certificate of academic excellence. So we are really pleased tonight to present Margaret Jensen, having duly qualified under the standards prescribed by the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents, is hereby awarded the certificate of academic excellence, in witness whereof the seal of the association and the signature of the superintendent of schools are hereunto affixed. Congratulations. Come on up. Hold on to this. I want to read a little bit about Maggie. And this is full circle. I was principal of Stanley when Maggie was a wee one. That's an old expression, but she was a little one. I don't know if it was kindergarten. Really, really small. So to be here tonight presenting her with this award as a senior is a real honor for me. Brings tears to my eyes. With a genuine and bright smile, Maggie Jensen lights up any room she walks into. A student leader with SHS ambassadors and a representative for our district school committee, Maggie embodies our Swampscott vision of a graduate. She is an effective communicator through her excellent writing skills and her seemingly easy yet confident approach to oral presentations or a campus tour of SHS. Loyal, supportive, compassionate, and kind, Maggie is a wonderful friend and respectful to all she encounters. Her future will be filled with opportunities that she chooses. Her success in every subject area shows an academic strength and a work ethic that is admirable and unyielding. Congratulations. I'm so proud of you. Wait, I need to
Get a picture?
You know how that is.
Absolutely. Oh, yes, we do.
You know?
I'm hiding behind this.
I'm
This
gonna-
week one.
There's no place to hide, actually.
I know, I know.
All right.
Thank you. Now you can go home and continue that unyielding. And get your homework done.
Get your home.
We're excused.
Congratulations to the entire family.
Congrats.
That's awesome.
Love that part. We're going to continue celebrations with the next portion of the agenda, and that is recognition of teachers who are awarded professional status. I am going to read the list of teachers who achieved professional status. This is something after 3 years that you work towards in your professional career, and it is an achievement in and of itself. This year we have a few attendees, and we have Principal Shea and Principal Kalishman here to read about their professional status people, but I'm going to go through and read the list to the committee. We have Eddie Rovey, who is a high school music and high school band teacher, Colleen Reed, an ELL teacher at Clark, Patricia Cepeda, 7th grade math at middle school, Lara Dandrio, grade 5 at middle school, Jolynn DeGeorge, Stanley Special Education, Cynthia Donnelly, grade 3 at Hadley, Daniel O'Connor, physical education at Clark, Will Pennyman, middle school STEM teacher, Tim Ressler, who's here tonight in person, music and band at the elementary level, Kirsten Riegel, middle school social studies, Jessica Minter, special education teacher in the middle school, and Maria Zachlin, ELL at the middle school. So I'll first call up Mr. Kalishman to present and read a biography of your attendees tonight.
Just making sure I only attendees this afternoon, right?
Ms. Zachlin is here,
All right.
yes.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
So, first of all, I'm just so proud of all of our teachers. Just so you know, if anybody knows the middle school, I drive a hard bargain when it comes to professional status. It's not easy to get, and we want the best and brightest, and we are lucky with this crop of new recruits. Ms. Zachlin came to us as an ELL teacher from Stanley Elementary for 2 years and is now in her 2nd year teaching at Swampscott Middle School. Prior to this, Maria was a language learner teacher in Lynn Public Schools for 5 years, working both with children and adult English learners. Before that, Ms. Zachlin was a classroom teacher in Charlottesville, Virginia, where she found her calling teaching ELL. She began her teaching career in the Bronx, New York at Public School 86, an exceptional school that collaborated with Teachers College to train teachers in reading and writing workshop. Thank you, Maria. Congratulations, and we look forward to a long career at Swampscott Middle School.
And the district will be sharing a little gift with all of you, but Ms. Zachlin, if you'd like to say a few words.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here. Both of my children are Swampscott School students, and I was thrilled to get the position at Stanley, and now I'm just really excited to be at the middle school as well. I'm so impressed with everything that's going on there behind the scenes, and both of my own children have had really great experiences in Swampscott. So happy to be here and excited about being at the middle school. Thanks.
Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you.
Let me turn it over to Ms. Shea.
She's muted, I think.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I am very thrilled. We have 3 elementary teachers that work at Clark and some other schools that are achieved professional development. And the other person who's not here is Dan O'Connor. And also here is Colleen Reed, who's on video, and Tim Ressler. And all 3 of them really live up to the expression, "Together we shine." So I'm, very pleased to be speaking on their behalf. So Colleen, who's here tonight, came to us with a lot of experience. She actually has been a teacher for she was 13 years experience before she even came to us. She spent 6 years in Ecuador and also taught in Korea for 5 years. And she came to us as an English language learner teacher. And I don't know if everybody's aware, but at Clark, we have close to 24% of our population are children who English was not their native language. And some of the children who come in are just beginners who don't speak any English, who just came over from abroad. And then others have been with us for a while and are very advanced. And Colleen started at Stanley, I believe, or Hadley. Sorry, I have to look at my little cheat sheet here. She started at Hadley and Clark, and she's been at Clark full-time since 2018. But what I really love about Colleen is that she just goes above and beyond with advocating for English language learner families. You know, whenever something comes up, she'll always be thinking of them. For example, we were talking about the online COVID testing, and she came to me and said, how many of the ELL families have signed up? Do I need to do anything to help make sure they have that information? So those are the little things that are easy to get overlooked, and she's just that little voice that's always thinking of them and bringing up their needs and making sure that they have the information. And she also does above and beyond things like volunteering to help orient new staff. The other day I walked in and there was some child that wasn't picked up, and she was there helping entertain him while we were waiting for his ride. So it's just those little things that, not just being a wonderful teacher, but she just contributes to the whole school culture. So I'm very pleased that she has professional status. So
Congratulations, Colleen. Would you like to say a few words?
Hi, everybody. So as Ms. Shea said, I've worked in a number of places before I came to Swampscott, and I've just been so happy since I joined. I love the community. I love the diverse population of students I get to work with, and Clark is just such a special school. I know a lot of you have heard that phrase, "Together we shine," over the last year, and I think it really embodies how everybody works together and how everybody puts the interests of the students at the forefront of everything that they do. I've been so happy and settled since joining, and I'm just really excited to continue my work, and I'm excited about the direction that the district is taking to continue their work with bringing supportive practices to include students and celebrate the diversity that we have in our community. So thank you very much.
Well, congratulations. We're very happy to have you. And Principal Shea will do Timothy Ressler, and he'll actually get his little gift here.
Hi, Tim. So I'm very pleased to speak on behalf of Tim. He also came to us with a lot of experience. He taught for 12 years general music, chorus, and band in Harwich and Chatham. And since he joined the Swampscott school system, he's actually been teaching at all 3 schools in some capacity. He teaches general music and chorus at Stanley full-time, almost full-time, and then he comes over to Clark and Hadley to offer band to our 4th grade students. And he also, during COVID, he was online creating lessons for all of the students in the elementary music program. And when I was talking with Kathleen Huntley, who's the Stanley principal, about Tim, and I love what she said about him. She said he was like the Pied Piper of recess. And when we talk about Together We Shine, the specialist really pitched in helping us last year with how to manage recess and filling in a lot of staffing gaps. And one of the things that Tim did is out at recess, I heard that he would bring a lot of instruments out and have like the children doing parades and just playing different instruments. And then the other thing that he does, over at Stanley, they have a couple of special education programs, and in his free time, he'll go into the programs and just bring music into them. She gave me an example of teaching kids to add by on a drum, hitting the drum like one time and then another time, and then together it's two, like 1 + 1, and using the drum. So he really has a passion for music, but it's really his spirit. Like when I think of Tim, he's just like this very gentle, gentle soul, and has a lovely way of connecting with children in a very kind of subtle way while bringing in that love for music. And he's just been a joy to have at all of our schools. So we're grateful, Tim, for having you.
Thank you, Principal Shea. Congratulations. Mr. Ressler, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you. Just a few. I just want to say that I really enjoy working in Swampscott, and it's a very big accomplishment for me to be here tonight, and I'm really excited for years to come.
We hope to have you for years to come. Come on down. We do have a little present for you. I'll go that way.
Hold on. So someone's here, we should get a picture.
Our appreciation and congratulate you for achieving professional status. A small token of our appreciation. Okay, I think we need to get a...
It's always nice when someone's in person.
Exactly. We miss it.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Big round of applause for all those professional status. It's awesome.
Congratulations to all of you, and we look forward to working with you for many, many years. And thank you. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm going to interrupt you just one second.
You go right ahead.
It's really exciting to hear principal at the elementary school level and at the middle school level speak so generously about these teachers, and it just speaks to the quality that's getting hired. And I love hearing them be excited about their educators that are working in their building, and that just flows over, just awesome.
I agree. You can really hear that
Yeah.
they're a team. You know what I mean?
And I love to hear the spirit of the educators through the last 2 years that have stuck with us and still are loving their profession. So, yeah, congratulations. It's a huge achievement. So, moving on, the third item on the agenda, I had talked about a couple of weeks ago at one of our meetings that one of the best appointments this year was Mr. Harris being appointed the Director of Social Emotional Learning. And the way that we have focused on this priority in the district for a number of years in my role as superintendent, but now whether it is the pandemic or not the pandemic, it is the right time to bring it all together with a director for this department. And so I did promise the committee I would bring back Mr. Harris, and he's here tonight to share his vision, mental health vision and data. Mr. Harris?
Hi, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Everyone can see this presentation. While I'm distanced from everyone, I'm going to be able to
take it off because
feel free
to talk. Hi, I'm really excited to be here and to be able to talk about social emotional learning and mental health and data. First off, you may wonder, what exactly does a director of social emotional learning do? And my job is to promote mental health and wellness for all students and educators in the Swampscott Public School District. I want to highlight that I included educators in this statement because happy teachers make for happy students. We know one of the things about mental health is that it's contagious. Anxious people leak anxiety, and happy people spread happiness. So we want to make sure that the adults our students see in the building every day are happy and have the social emotional skills and have the social emotional environment so they can do good work. In terms of my other duties, here's a list of what I am assigned to do. To supervise clinical programming, develop curriculum, and help students become good people. When we say to students we want them to pay attention and we want them to make good decisions, that is an educational process, and we know that we need to actually teach our students, how do you make a good decision? How do you manage to pay attention? How do you get that level of self-regulation? I also do a lot of data review and oversee mental health response to incidents. Tonight, I'm going to share two topics in particular. First, the mental health vision for the clinical services in the district, as well as some advancements in how we collect data and how we review data for mental health and for a variety of things across the district. So, in terms of a mental health vision, I came into this year and I was trying to think, what do we want to say that we will be able to provide in Swampscott Public Schools? And I came up with this, and I'm trying to have some snazzy branding going on here and saying, the right student with the right services at the right time for the right amount of time in a sustainable way. And I'm going to boil it down even more. Right student, right services, right time, sustainable. I'm going to go and say a little bit more. By right student, we want to make sure that the students who need mental health services in order to access their education get those services. We want to make sure that it is easy for them to be referred, so we have multiple pathways, and we want to make sure that it's slot into our existing systems, multi-tiered series of supports, and to outreach to students who we might not see or pick up on otherwise. We also want to make sure we're offering the best services we possibly can. We want to make sure that we're offering evidence-based services. We want to make sure that we're offering the right tier of service and the right intensity of service. And we want to make sure that we're monitoring what we're doing to make sure it's actually working. We also want to be mindful of the limits that we have. As a school, as much as I would love to get into the nitty-gritty of doing every mental health service we possibly can, we have to acknowledge that there are limits to what we are able to treat and what we are able to help with. Our main goal, our main service is an educational one. And so we need to make sure to make referrals to outside agencies when we need to. By right time, what I'm thinking here is I want to make sure that we reduce or eliminate any lag before students start to have difficulties, and we're not in a wait to fail model. We have plenty of data about students, and our job is to try and make sure that we can make good predictions, so we're building resilience rather than trying to pick up the pieces and be reactive afterwards. I also want to make sure that we are looking at our interventions so we don't get into the habit of just giving one student the same intervention over and over again because that's what's on the grid or that's what's been done in years past. I want to make sure that we're making the best use of our limited resources so we can say, we worked for 6 weeks, we gave the students skills, we got the data saying this improved, and now we can move this student towards independence. When I spoke to school committee years ago about Harbor and Swift at the high school and pitching that as a program, I said, I want to put myself out of business. I still do. Business is very good right now, but I still want to try to put myself out of business by making sure we're giving as much skills, resilience, and independence to our students as we possibly can. This last piece, I originally had a snappy 3-part slogan, but I thought it was really important over the last 2 years to talk about sustainability for staff. Our staff are really, really important. And we know that turnover in staff, and especially for clinical staff as holders of trauma, we need to take care of them. And we need to make sure that caseloads are equitable, manageable, and that we design a system so that we make sure that they are given the care that they need to provide our students with the very best care that they can. So when it comes to what the mental health vision for the district is, I want to find the right student, give them the right services at the right time in a sustainable way. I'm also going to talk a little bit about how we can use data and how we can integrate data in a way that allows us to be more proactive and more predictive of where troubles are and make sure that we're actually using data. So, the way things are right now, we have each school has their own forms where they're collecting data on incidents like bullying or student support team or critical incidents that happen in the building. All that data, however, is siloed. It's all stored in places where maybe the administrator for the building can see it, or it's not necessarily being aggregated to a district level, even though district level administrators can view that data. In addition, we have a whole bunch of different sources of data that are being held. It's not like we don't have it, but it's being held by different professionals at different in different buildings, and it's not standardized across the system. So things like hospitalizations, CRAs, which is child's requiring assistance, it's a legal process, risk assessments. When we do a suicidal ideation screening, that's being held by one of the mental health professionals in a school, but it's not necessarily being shared out in a way that helps us as a system respond. And mandated reports. Again, we have all this data. It's just not shared out in a way that it's accessible and easy for people to get to. Now, because I'm a big data nerd, I was thinking, how can we change this? How can we try and make this a better system? And I stumbled across a way of using Google Forms and some spreadsheet tricks and Google Dashboard that will help us unite our system and automate a lot of the data work. So we're not needing to recreate things on the fly or needing to spend a lot of time and energy creating nice looking pie charts. Instead, we get that done automatically. Mm-hmm. And it's in a nice visual representation so people can see it easily. So, my goal with this is to try and make sure that we actually use the data that we collect. A lot of the data that is siloed right now is kind of entered, and then it's, every quarter maybe we look over it or we use it in a way for end of year reports, but it's not actionable in the moment. Mm-hmm. I want to try and change that. I also want to make sure that this is an easy process. Our administrators and our mental health professionals have lots of things, and I don't want to add another thing on their plate. I want to make this as easy and as efficient as possible. So what is this going to look like? This is an example of a website that I am building for our mental health professionals. It has all the forms that they would need to fill out all in one place, and then it has an easy link to their dashboard. What is the dashboard going to look like, you may ask? So this is an example. I made up the data here, so don't read anything into it. This is an example of what the dashboard may look like. For the high school administrators can open this up and instantly be able to see, okay, what are the referrals for the student support team looking like? How many hospitalizations have we had? How many risk assessments have we done? What grade of the risk assessments? And on the left-hand side there, you can see all the different tabs that are available. Here's another one for risk assessments. We know how many students have been referred to the mobile crisis team, what the referral source was. So we want to know, are we setting the threshold for GoGuardian, for example, too high or too low? Are we getting a lot of good information from teachers? Is it coming from the nurse? Where is our sources of information that are useful? And what grade are we seeing most impacted by mental health issues? Again, this is another example of what a student support team dashboard may look like. And this allows us to really understand where are the problem areas and how can we be proactive in our programming and in how we respond with our services.
Mr. Harris, can I chime in here, if that's okay? If you could go back to the previous slide, just to give an example of how excited I am about this. When I was a building principal, so every week, every school has a student support team process, and they meet and they talk about kids. The teachers can submit students that they're concerned about, be them academic, be them social emotional. And back in the day when I was at Stanley, we kept a binder, and all of those kids were in that binder. And I was super excited when we came to a process of, let's pass those 4th grade SST forms to the middle school so that they could go through them. Like, hand off those forms. And now we're here, all these years later. I'm super proud that we're moving with the times. We're not doing the paper. Like, that was a huge accomplishment. Are the 4th graders being passed to the middle school? Do they even know that these kids have been, SST'd before? So to have access to this kind of information is really critical for the success of these populations, I think.
So to that, continuing on with the point that Ms. Angelakis just brought up, one of the key things that I see as important as my job is trying to connect the system to itself. There is a phrase that is mentioned in every single professional development on brain development, every single professional development on trauma. Everything is talked about, and that phrase is neurons that fire together, wire together. And that means in the brain, when you do something, it creates connections between neurons. And as you do that thing over and over again, it becomes more and more automatic. The cost on the system is less, and it becomes something that is simpler and easier to do over and over again. When talking about my role as Director of Social Emotional Learning, my first job I see is to try and see how, as a system, we can stop working in islands and how we can make connections with each other to create efficiencies, to make sure we're doing our services better, and make sure that we're making the job easier for everyone involved. And these are 2 initiatives that I'm starting off with to try and understand and to try and make sure that we're doing the best job that we can with our mental health services.
Thank you so much. Committee questions?
I do, actually. Great job, by the way, Craig, as always. Without breaking any sort of confidentiality, can you let us know year over year, 2 year over years, and 3 year over years, the percentage increase in mental health service requests from the staff?
I don't have that exact data, partially because we're trying to tabulate from previous years, because we don't have data systems like this, is a little bit of a intensive process. However, I can say we have already, between all the schools, done 7 suicidal ideation risk assessments since the start of school. And many of those have required calling the mobile crisis team to determine if we need to hospitalize a student. I can also say that in terms of the acuity of cases, the intensity of cases, we have seen an increase in cases, and we have seen that the outside mental health system is completely overloaded. So this is another reason why we need to get this right in school, is to make sure that we are doing what we can to give students the services that they need and be a holding ground as we refer out, because it may be a little bit of time before students get the needed services outside of school.
Just a follow-up question. Do you think, and I'm just kind of dovetailing on a graphic that Ms. Angelakis had sent out regarding the last normal school year, and I was just calculating my twin college juniors, and their last normal school year was their senior year in high school, and I'm flabbergasted by that. Are you seeing, with school being open as relatively normal as possible right now, are you seeing an improvement at all in just the general mental health of the community of learners?
I would say it's a mixed bag. With the return to normalcy, we have a return of normal demands. And it's almost as if, after an illness, a person is starting to try and do, the exercises that they did before. There's strain there. there's extra effort. And when you're trying to restart something that is hard, there's the possibility for injury. And I would say for some of our students, it is a tremendous relief, and they may be feeling really great to be back into school. It's a place of competency. It's a restoration of social connections. For some of our students, it may be really tough. That time out let some things atrophy, and they need some help. So I would say, yes, there is an increase in mental health need, and we're seeing a mixed reaction.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Craig.
Hey.
And congratulations on the new position. Great job tonight. I'm just curious, and maybe this is premature as you're still gathering data and everything, but is the programming that you're putting together, is it going to target just the at-risk population, or are you thinking of, also kind of the general entire population as well, just for, programming there as well?
So I'm so glad that you asked that. We want to start with our clinical population right now. That's where I have the initial expertise. We have been working for a number of years in terms of trying to figure out how can we do Tier 1 or universal social-emotional learning. I have been talking to a lot of teachers across the district, and I know the high school has done things with learning community. I know the middle school has done initiatives, and I know the elementary schools always promote social-emotional learning for all their students. Where I see us being able to move into the next level is to do universal social-emotional learning using evidence-based programs. And that is, again, something in the future to start to work on and to work towards, and really make sure that we're having something standardized pre-K through 12, so we're using the same language, using the same programming, and we're connected as a system.
All right, great. And look forward to hearing about it down the road. All right, thanks.
Thanks, Craig. I don't have any questions, but I just want to say that it was an excellent presentation, and I feel very confident that we're moving in the right direction with this position and with you in this position. And it's very exciting to hear what you're trying to do and that you see a clear vision. But I just think with that said, it's just so nerve-wracking, right, where we're at. And so I'm glad you're on. I'm glad you're on the job and that you're on the case, and anything that we can do, always.
So that's the perfect lead-in, because I'm thinking that when I listen to you talk about the right time and thinking about not wanting to wait till kids fail, I keep thinking about the special ed model. Not that it just I don't. So how is the social emotional learning and getting FTEs and paying for stuff different from how special ed does it, where you wait to identify kids and do an IEP and things like that, and then services follow, and that's how we know who to hire and how much money we have. Where does the social emotional, where's our money coming from, and how do we help support that?
Mrs. Raymond.
So part of that is the multi-tiered systems of supports. So really what you want to do is look at your tier 1, so that all students are experiencing, and what Craig was talking about, is actually building a curriculum, a SEL curriculum from pre-K to 12, but that's what everybody receives. And that's about 80%. So 100% of the students receive it, but 80% of the students should be doing fine with that type of support, which is in general education. Right. So that's already there. Then there's the 20%, 15%, and then 5% that are at tier 3, and that's where more intensive services would come. Is there some overlap between special education providers and possibly in tier 2 and tier 3? Sure. I mean, we have that program here at the high school. The SWIFT program is actually a general education program, and the Harbor program is our special education program. So in terms of funding, basically it's looking at building the skill sets of our current providers, because the most important thing we're going to be doing is the tier 1 services. Most students are going to do fine with tier 1 services.
Right, but when you talk about our providers, our carers' emotional health, right? And I'm thinking, you know, even 15% and then 5%, like 20% of our population is a lot of kids, and that's a really big caseload if you have one care provider.
We've increased, though. If you look at the number of staff and school psychologists we have, I know Council's been added in a guidance counselor. We keep bumping up and bumping up and bumping up,
Well,
including this new position, which is incredible.
But can I just say that's a question that Mr. Pastor just asked? Like, if we look at the last 5 years and the amount of increase in mental health staff and psychologists and adjustment counselors we've added, I'd like to bring that back to the committee because I do think it's significant. We just do it because we know it's right, and I don't think we've had any plan to keep track of it, but I think it's an exercise I think we should do. You know, in addition to that, I think it, as the SEL, is a more proactive approach with the curriculum work that we intend to do rather than reactive. And I feel like in special education, we always are reacting.
Right, that's what
and so I feel like by putting Craig in place, by looking at the SEL curriculum, K-12, whatever it might be, doing the multi-tiered systems of support, we are going to be proactively teaching these kids these skills. There's still going to be the tier 2 and tier 3, but I think that's our approach and how it's a little bit different.
I imagine the goal is to decrease the number of
Yes.
tier
Yes.
kids, obviously, and
decrease
then,
your referrals.
and then,
Right.
and like you said, working yourself out of a job would be great. But in the meantime, I just keep thinking, like, how are we funding this? Like, how can we, like, special ed is so institutionalized, right? And there's so many systems that have been set up to talk about, like, how, I mean, mental health doesn't follow the same half an hour a day. It's like, or it just seems so much more fluid.
It's a little messy.
It definitely seems messier.
The
right?
IP document is not as conducive to a student who has a mental health challenge.
Right, that's why I'm saying,
Right.
like, you know,
Right.
we've been using these IP documents to substantiate how many teacher hours you need and all this kind of stuff, and we don't have that same.
Well, we do have clinical data of how many, how, you know, each of our providers who do work with students in terms of counseling or doing social skills groups, we do know what their caseloads are, and that's what pushes then, you know, when we meet as a team, we look at do we need to increase another FTE to provide those same services. The need has definitely gone up, but one thing which I'm thrilled that Craig is here, you know, our job is to provide access to an education and social emotional interactions with their peers. Like, that's our job. There are some things that are going to come into school right now that first of all, we're not skilled to do, nor should we be doing. So it's really important that we're connecting our families with supports outside of school, actually connecting with our pediatricians as well, because it really takes the whole community interconnectedness of supports in order to make this work. And that's critical.
I completely, like, 100% get it. Like, I totally get it. I'm just saying, like, we have to figure out how to give you enough money to have enough people to spread. I mean, this is like, I appreciate how much work this is. Like,
We'll come to you. We'll come
but I'm
to
just
you.
saying.
I think
have,
one of my other goals this year is to really do an in-depth resource map and to understand what services do we have that we're already offering. What is each clinician doing at each school, and understanding the caseload. So I think, you know, that is part of the process. I feel really, really, really lucky to be coming into this position, having worked with the mental health staff in the district.
right.
I can say we have amazing clinicians. Understanding the caseload put on each of them and understanding what each of them are doing is something that I want to continue to learn more about. And that will help us understand the level of need and the level of strain on each individual provider.
Dr. Anderson's team also has been very helpful this year. He's brought us 2 interns as well who are working with us. So he's actually, you know, really worked closely with our team. We actually have 3 of his clinicians from his team. So it's Dr. Anderson, 3 of his clinicians, and 2 interns who are working with us right now because we knew we need more support this year. So he's a great resource for us.
Yeah,
Are there, in light of the pandemic, are there any ESSER funds or grants or anything coming for these types of things, knowing that it's
ESSER
gonna be
3,
universal?
we can use that, and that goes through 2024. But this is, it's more about, I think, what we know how data-driven this committee is, as they should be, and it's more about coming back to the committee and saying, these are the gaps, this is what we need to fill, and these are the positions we need to fill them. And so that's where we'll need your support. And we'll certainly use grants, but if the grant runs out in 2024 and the need is still here, we're going to have to roll it into the operating budget.
Right,
but we've committed to those things in terms of Swift and Harbor at both the high school and the middle school, and we'll continue to commit to them, post-pandemic.
Right, and that was really the basis of my question, was let's get ahead of this today, or when next time we present the data, as we go forward to the next fiscal year.
Yep.
Next fiscal years, I guess.
Yeah, this
makes a lot of sense.
This isn't gonna fix itself anytime soon.
No, and truthfully for FY23, we are gonna be scratching the surface because we're still, digging to get the information. So I made some notes. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for the presentation. Mr. Harris, it was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I am going to share my screen now, and let me find it. The next items on my agenda are something that we do annually. Those of you that, I'm sorry, I skipped Ms. Raymond. I do want, it wasn't
Talk about the story?
Yeah, we had the nicest email, and this is such a nice story, and it's not a full presentation tonight, but it's important for the committee to hear this. It's a feel-good story.
So in September, I received an email from a John Polanski, and he talked about a man named Larry Eigner, who actually was born in 1927, who had a birth injury and had cerebral palsy. And what he did was talked about at Swampscott High School. They did not have him come into school, but the Swampscott High School principal, James Dunn, and a substitute teacher named Miss Blodgett worked with him and came in and taught him and provided tutoring, and he went to become a poet, a published poet. And what he wanted to do, his relative wanted to make sure that we knew the story. I had not heard this story before at all. And wanted to make sure that we educated our town about it, we educated our students about it. And so what we're going to be doing is having our Discovery Point program at the high school research, Larry Eigner. But what I'm really, and I've already bought one of his books, but what I really envision is our beautiful high school library, that we have a picture of him, his books here, and a whole project based upon him so that everybody understands even the evolution of special education and actually what these people did back then to help support him. So I have written back to him. He actually lives in California, and he was just so pleased that we were interested and wanted to learn more about him. But I have a book this thick of all the poems that he's written. So I'm really excited for our team at the high school and our students to research his life, and then be able to hopefully dedicate a little space in our library for him. So it's just a really nice story in the midst of all the things that we talk about.
Yeah,
it was wonderful.
Share that. So we'll be back after our students do their research. We'll come back and share more about it.
Thank you. So the next items 5, 6, 7, and 8 are things that I present to the committee annually, and the first is new student enrollment. We give you this data because the October 1st report is due to the state, and I will give you a summary of this, but this talks about where they've come from, if they've come in-house. The total is 115 new students enrolled in the Swampscott Public Schools. So you can see that total there. What I find interesting, and in going through this, I needed hard copies to do it, is, we talk a lot about the kids that leave us in 4th grade and head to the Marblehead Charter School. I want you to take a look at how many come back in the middle school. We have kids from Marblehead Charter coming back. We have kids from St. Mary's. We have kids from St. John's Prep at the high school. So we have students coming back to our district. And I think that's just important to point out, because we do talk a lot about the numbers when they withdraw at certain break points and go off into another school. But if you go through this list at your leisure and see who's coming back from the Marblehead Charter to our schools, it makes you feel, I'm proud. I'm proud that they're coming back to us. So that is a total of 115. Typically, the withdrawals match that number are very close in proximity. They're not this year. So the withdrawn students from July 1st to 10/7, that is a total of 164 students that withdrew. One is homeschooled. 34 of that 164 moved out of state. 61 went to private, and 68 went to in-state public. So those numbers were very different. They're typically a lot closer. I do also want to mention along these lines, because it's something that I just like to keep track of. We only have one homeschool here mentioned, and that is at the Hadley School. But I asked Ms. Donna McHugh to pull the list of homeschooling numbers over the last few years. In the school year 1920, we had 18 students homeschooled. In the school year 2021, we had 28 students homeschooled. And in this current school year right now, including this student, we have 13 students that are being homeschooled. So that is an interesting number. I think it's important to talk about enrollment before you may ask questions that I might not have the answers to, but I ask Mrs. Karen to submit to the committee every year, so for a couple of reasons. In October, on October 1st, these are the reports that get submitted to the state, and you can read this rather than me reading it to you, but the Student Information Management System has 52 student data fields per student. The EPIMS is the Educational Personnel Information Management System, and then student course schedule. Every student has to have a course schedule. Every staff member has to have their information put in, and this came about many years ago and is the reason behind hiring a data specialist, taking an administrative assistant and making them a data specialist, because the state reporting over the last, even in my tenure in this office, has grown dramatically. Yes, this is one report, but she is consistently sending reports and data to the state. And then the final enrollment for October 1, I do want to talk a little bit about, because I pulled June's report, because this report gets done in, is that better for you to see?
Yep.
Okay, this report gets done in October and June. We are down our total enrollment. I have to move my window here. Our total enrollment is down 73 students from last June. We are at 2,044 students in district, and last June we were at 2,117 students in district. Now, one of the things that struck me, because of course I'm thinking 73 students, that's a lot, what's happening? One of the things that struck me is in June, we graduated a grade 12 class of 189 students. We brought into kindergarten 148.
Right.
So that right there is a 41 student difference, which made me feel a little bit more settled. But I do note that our enrollment, as we talk about the proposed elementary school, used to be about 738. It's now down to 707. But our classes, if you look even at our grade 12 class for this current school year, is 190 students. And if you look in the lower grades, even grade 4, we have 128, grade 5, 135. So we had some large student populations and enrollment in the upper grades, and now they're lower. So given all that information, the withdrawn, the new students, the Swampscott enrollment, I think there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle. I do think there's a major piece in saying that the class that we brought in is 41 students less than the class that graduated. So I present all that information for your thought. I'll I'll do my best to answer any questions, but these are presented to you annually.
Does anyone want to comment on anything?
Probably going to be some COVID baby booms, right? In
Well, there's
the next few years.
There's
So
definitely going to
it
be
follows
that.
trends.
It does, but you know, when you first see the numbers, and when our data specialist, Mrs. James, is doing this, and she says the numbers, she's like, the numbers aren't looking good, and I'm thinking, what? But then when you start to analyze the class sizes, and then you take a look at 164 left, but 115 came in, and those numbers are typically closer. But I do think we're going to have a little bit of a baby boom, and those numbers will come up.
Right. I mean, there's like a psychology to how that works and what's happening in the world and things like that. And
Right.
But there's no denying, though, there's quite a few kids that have left to go to St. John's, and there's plenty of kids. I mean, look at the elementary school numbers from Stanley, a ton of kids going to private school, too.
Right. I think there was a big worry that this might not be a normal school year, and they felt maybe that would happen, you know, someplace.
We did talk about last year that the private schools stayed open.
Right.
And for families that couldn't make it work with the hybrid that we were offering, had to make choices.
Right.
And they're not easy choices, but they had to make them for their children and for their family.
So what's happening at the state level about funding for our next year? I mean, this is, you know, just because we have 64 or 100 less kids or whatever, it's not like we still have the same number of teachers, because even though there's 128 fourth graders, there's still 7 classrooms with, you know, 19 kids in them, right? So it's not like we're going to have less funding, but we still have the same need for same teachers. Or I'm just wondering what's going to happen with the budget. Is there any sort of hold harmless for another year? Is there any sort of?
I haven't heard anything yet, but certainly when Ms. Seibert is back, she can speak to, you know, whatever she's hearing on her listserv in terms of finance directors. And in terms of budget, I haven't heard anything from our conference calls and things.
So I just have a question.
Sure.
Again, being a little bit of a data wonk.
Mm-hmm.
So you have it divided by homeschool, private, public, and transfer out of state.
Mm-hmm.
The transfer in-state public, does that include charter, or is charter considered private?
That's considered public.
Considered public.
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. And with that, I'm going to go on to one other item. We do have another presentation. These have been bumped from time to time. I'm going to give Dr. Bacon co-hosting privileges as well. Sorry, Dr. Bacon, I should have done it sooner. And she has a presentation on Mcas in addition to the new teacher induction program. And I asked her to bring this to the committee because years ago, the new teacher induction program was a 2-day program. Actually, it was a day and a half. And it's now been expanded with Dr. Bacon and her team to 4 days. I think it's really important that she share with the committee all that the new teachers go through that are hired in our district. Are you able to share, Dr. Bacon?
I believe so.
Great.
I'll go ahead and start sharing. Here we go. Okay, so thank you again for inviting me to share some information about our 2021 Mcas Performance and also our new teacher induction program. So as I begin, I just wanted to remind you, as you well know, some of the context for the Mcas test that our students participated in last spring. So as you know, a year and a half before that, our students went remote, and we're having remote learning only for a few months at the end, the last quarter or so, at the end of the 1920 school year. There was no MCAS test given in 2020, right after the pandemic began. And then last year, as you know, we had remote and hybrid learning from September all the way through March. And it wasn't until April that most students returned in person 5 days a week to school. And it was that same period where students were then given the MCAS. And the MCAS last year was an abbreviated version of the MCAS at grades 3 through 8. They only participated in one section, rather than they usually have 2 testing sessions per subject area. And the high school was a normal MCAS except for the science, which I'll talk about in a minute. But that gives you a context of where the circumstances under which our students took MCAS. And again, students across the state, some were similar to ours, some had even more remote learning. And not surprisingly, the state results for the MCAS were considerably less favorable than they had been pre-pandemic, the last time it was given in 2019. So I wanted to share with you, again, to put our results in a little bit of context, this is what happened statewide. So in the state overall, the proportion of students who met or exceeded expectation on the MCAS in 2021, for grades 3 to 8, it dropped by 6% in English and 15% in math. And in grade 10, which is a little bit different, this is the only place in the state where there was actually an increase in performance, was on the grade 10 ELA exam. Students statewide, 3% more students statewide met or exceeded expectation in 2021 than had been the case in 2019. And for 10th grade math, the number meeting and exceeding expectations fell by 7%. So as we go through the data for Swampscott, I'll refer back to these numbers. So again, you can see kind of our strengths and weaknesses in some context. So these are our ELA results for the last 3 years. So you can see the 2018 is in blue, the 2019 in purple, and the 2021 in gold. So as you see, if I'll start with the high school, that was the only area where we improved in our ELA performance, was at the high school level in grade 10, and as was true across the state. The state improved by 3%. Our percent of students meeting and exceeding expectations went up by 7%. So we did a little bit better than the state during the pandemic in terms of the education that we were giving our 9th and into 10th graders during the time of the pandemic. At the elementary and middle, our scores dropped. At the overall, if you recall, at the statewide, the drop for grades 3 to 8 was 6%. So in middle school, where we only dropped 1%, we did a little bit better than statewide performance. At the elementary level, we did not. So the state at the elementary level dropped by about 6% in grades 3 and 4, and we dropped by 13%. So it's clear that that elementary English language arts instruction that we were able to provide during remote and hybrid learning for the most part was not as effective as we might have hoped and as instruction was statewide. And here are our math results. Again, mirroring statewide performance, the proportion of students who met or exceeded expectations on the 2021 MCAS fell compared to how we had done in 2019. Starting at the left, in the elementary level, if you recall, in grades 3 to 8, the state percent meeting and exceeding dropped by 15%. At the elementary level, we only dropped by 6%. So again, even though it was a decrease, we did better than the state overall in terms of our elementary mathematics performance. At the middle school, it was the opposite. The state again dropped by 15, we dropped by slightly more than that, 18%. So that's another area that we need to look at. And in the high school, we pretty much mirrored the state. We dropped by 6%, and the state dropped by 7%. Science, similar pattern. Generally, everybody in the state did a little bit less well than they had done in the past, and our percentage of drop pretty much mirrored what happened statewide at grades 5 and grades 8. They were within a couple percentage points of one another. At the high school biology, the state did not release any comparative data for any of the high school science tests, since students were not required to take it in grade 10 last year. So different school systems did different things, and they decided not to release any statewide data for the high school science, so we don't have any comparative data in that. But again, it's not a huge deficit considering the way that we were required or forced to deliver our educational programming last year. So despite the fact that we pretty much fell overall, with the exception of high school English, which again mirrored what the state was able to accomplish, and we did slightly better than the state, this still gives you a sense of the proportion of our students who are meeting or exceeding expectations in 2021 in Swampscott, which is the blue line, and the proportion of students meeting and exceeding expectations statewide. So we continue, as we always have historically, to generally run about 10 points above statewide performance. So, and if you recall, the last time I did this presentation in 2019, I had pointed out at that time we were particularly concerned by many years of decline in the elementary math performance. Since 2012 all the way through 2019, our performance had been declining, and in 2019, our percentage of meeting and exceeding expectations was really at the state level. So I'm very pleased with the elementary mathematics improvement that we showed last year. We've been putting a lot of effort into our elementary mathematics program over the past 2 years since I've been here, even throughout the pandemic, and hopefully we're starting to see that many years of decline start to turn around, where we're growing in a new direction. So the big takeaways, overall, I think our educators and our families did a remarkable job in supporting student learning during the pandemic, because it really was a team effort for most of last year to help students learn effectively. So there's a couple areas of concern moving forward that were evident in the data that we're going to continue to investigate and think about how to address. Elementary English language arts, the drop in the literacy scores for our 3rd and 4th graders compared to the state was concerning, as well as the drop in middle school mathematics. Those are 2 areas where we're starting to do some things to try to, even before we knew what the data said, those were areas that were on our radar screen as areas of potential concern that we've started to make some changes to address. And then again, the K-4 mathematics, we're going to continue to follow that, but as I said, I'm very pleased with the fact that we are now sort of on the trajectory up again in terms of our performance relative to the state. So that's terrific news. And our hopes for 2022 are that we can return to mostly regular instruction across the board for most of the year this year, if we can keep our response to COVID in a fashion that allows us to be in school most of the time. So that will, I think, improve performance for us as it will for students across the state. And then we continue our specific focus on elementary mathematics. We introduced 2 new math programs this year. We replaced our core curriculum with a new curriculum called Illustrative Mathematics, and we're using a supplemental program for some additional technology-based practice and support to help address some of the curricular and instructional issues that we saw in elementary mathematics. And we're also, again, our math team, thanks to the school committee support, has really expanded over the past couple of years. We now have 2 full-time and 2 part-time math coaches that are helping teachers to implement the new programs and supporting them in any way they can. So that's pretty much it for MCAS. I'll pause here to see if anybody has any questions at the moment before I go on to talk about new teacher induction.
Yes, no. I think I'm more curious about MCAS this coming year.
Right.
Okay.
Than I
Rather
am.
than what happened, yeah. Rather than what happened this past year.
Yeah. Thank you, though.
All right. Oops. So new teacher induction. So as the superintendent pointed out, we spent 3.5 days together in late August, right before the beginning of school. This year we had, It had 19 new teachers attended, and we collaborated, and 23 of my district's colleagues led presentations or workshops over the course of that 3.5 days. And I think that's one of the things the new teachers enjoy most, is they really get some face time and to meet a lot of people in the district, both leadership positions and colleagues. I have many teachers participate and do presentations on various topics during the induction. And I linked here the induction agenda. if people would like to see the whole program for the 3.5 days. I don't know if you want me to share it now, Superintendent, or
I think you could just scroll through it and do a sampling of some of the workshops that took place.
Okay. Oh, very slow here. Introductory material. Okay. So one of the things that I try to do in the induction is we're trying to, as a district, promote mindfulness activities, both as adults and adults who need some mindfulness, and things that we can do with children to support their social and emotional development and a calm and organized approach to learning. So throughout the thing, you'll see mindfulness moments, and we model different types of mindfulness activities that we encourage people to experiment with their students. And I continue that with the new teachers. I have workshops with them every 6 weeks or so during the school year, and we continue to build that library of tools that they have in their toolbox to encourage mindfulness practice. So we had Ms. O'Connor from the school committee come, and the superintendent came later in the week. And so we give a brief introduction. We, again, social emotional learning and leadership in Swampscott is Friends Center. That's something we talk about on the very first day. It's so important, and we want to set the stage for what we do with folks. There's a lot of technology training that happens over the course of the few days, and that was, again, something that the new teachers in the feedback, which I'll share in a moment, really appreciated. Ms. Raymond comes in and talks about special education. Our 3rd grade teacher, Becky Gruthius, came in and talked about universal design for learning to start bringing our new teachers up to speed on that, which is one of our district philosophies about best practice instruction. More stuff in that. They get time with their building principals and to see their new rooms in the buildings. This is, I think, one of the favorite parts. We started this last year, the station rotations. So there's lots of us involved, and the teachers move in half-hour blocks to different rooms to learn from different people about a variety of different issues that are important for anyone entering the district. And then the last day, we sort of wrap things up. And Chris Norkin and Emily Zotto-Barnum did a wonderful presentation on equity and cultural responsiveness in the last day. And again, that was one of the attendees' favorite parts. I see a typo there, sorry about that. Fix that. Okay. All right, so that's kind of an overview of what we did.
I just think it's a jam-packed agenda, and it's really very broad, and it really welcomes new teachers into the district and demonstrates what our district stands for. Yeah. I think I'm just proud of the work that Dr.
It's so nice to see this happening after all these years, like talking about it and like finally seeing it like a real onboarding happening.
Right.
How about, so what are you doing every 6 weeks? Do you meet with these same group of new teachers?
Yes, so all the new teachers are assigned an individual personal mentor who they meet with kind of as needed and regularly throughout the school year, who answer their sort of more daily questions. Usually it's someone in a very role-similar position or someone else close to their position within the building that can help orient them in an ongoing way. Because obviously we can't teach them everything they need to know in 3.5 days. Right. So they have that support. And then I meet with them about once every 6 weeks to support various things and some of the continuation of some of these topics. Like, for example, we've met twice, I think, this fall already. So I could support them with writing their educator goals for the year. So we had workshops and work time around that where I could help them and give them feedback, and then we'll move on to other things. They requested more technology training, which we'll incorporate into some of the future sessions. They really liked the work on the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, so we'll incorporate that. Craig is going to come in and I think do some additional work on social emotional learning with them. So we have a series of things that happen over the course of the year based on their needs and interests. And again, it's a diverse group. We have special educators, we have regular educators, we have everything from kindergarten to high school. We have nurses. So anyone who's covered by the teacher contract is part of this induction program. And so every year I do, the past 2 years where I've run this, I do a little evaluation. So I wanted to share some of that with you. So the last question we ask is overall, how satisfied are you with the induction program? And again, this year, people tend to be quite satisfied with what's happened. And I linked here, if you're interested, just the narrative comments. So one of the questions we ask is, what were your favorite parts? And that's good information for us. And then we also ask, what could we do to improve induction? And so some of those things we look at all the time and try to do better next year or address some of those concerns in our ongoing meetings.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
So that's where we are with that. Does anybody have any questions?
Anyone?
No questions. I think it's great.
I think it's awesome. It makes me really proud to be in a district that feels so professional and is investing so much time in making sure that new teachers are comfortable and learn what we're about here and hopefully stay. So that's
Well,
awesome.
Dr. Bacon, can I share the new piece that we just kind of voted on today? To take that all a step further, one of the things that we're working to improve is sustainability with anything. So the question came up, and Dr. Bacon led a meeting with a lot of people in the office with the onboarding process. What do we do about teachers we hire after this is over?
Yeah, right.
They don't get this. And so Dr. Bacon and LaTanya set up a system whereby, and we talked with the principals at the leadership team meeting today, that there'll be a hire date for staff, but they won't be reporting straight to their buildings. They will report to the high school to get a mini version of this the first day, get their technology, so they're not going to the building and not knowing what they're doing.
Right.
So I think, talk about upping the professionalism of this district.
That's great.
That one change in the principals allowing that to happen, it might be a half day that first morning. They come straight to the high school. They get their Chromebook. They get their tutorials. They get a shorter version of this, I think is really up in our game. So I'm really, really proud of that move we made today.
It's great.
Thank you, Dr. Bacon.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And that concludes my portion after almost 2 hours. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, that was awesome. I know we missed a meeting, but there's just so much going on, and I think that it's really important that we hear these reports and other people, it's out there. So the next item on the agenda is the chair's report, and since Amy's not here, unless you want to say anything, we'll skip item number 6 and go straight to subcommittees. School building committee update, there's nothing happening, and except for a vote. So early voting is happening right now. You can vote at the town hall the rest of this week, and then regular voting is on October 19th everyone will be voting at the high school. So encourage everyone to get out there, and speaking as a school committee member and a school building committee member, and as a parent in the district, and as a volunteer in Swampscott, I think that this is the best option, and I encourage people to support the new school building. So that's the SBC update. Hopefully we'll have more work after the 19th because we'll be building a building.
That's right.
And the next, I'm going to sort of take these out of order. We have policy bullying prevention. We had a brief meeting today, and we're gonna look at our policy and compare it to the bullying protocols and procedures and investigation report and everything, just to make sure we're in line, and then we'll bring it back to this committee. And then I'm gonna Mrs. Mulcahy and Mr. Giantris and I met today to talk about the other policy here, the COVID, our EBC policy, which is the COVID-related policies. And specifically, we were talking about COVID pool testing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, want to just add some stuff, Mrs. Mulcahy?
Sure. So
I think she needs a mic. Does she need a mic? Excuse me. Just a tickle.
I know. It's okay.
So yeah, we had a great conversation today about where we left off last time I was at the school committee regarding implementing another mitigation tool for extracurricular activities regarding mandatory or routine or required pool testing and how it could be beneficial to implement. I do know that at least 2 schools, Framingham and Salem, have implemented this same type of mitigation into their school. It was a policy that their school committee agreed on, and with working with the health department, and they felt like it was the best measure to implement. Our testing is up and running. We have actually done over 359 tests. Out of those 359 tests, 209 of them were actually pools. That I quickly did the math, averaged about 1,380 individuals in those 209 pools. 4 of those pools did come back positive, and we were able to identify some of the positive people who were in the pool, which helped the process of catching it quickly, doing the contact tracing, and continuing. We've done about 129 point of care testing so far, which is basically the test that the nurses or the health team are doing for test and say, symptomatic, or reflex testing. This is something that just recently we realized that Broad Institute, who's the lab company who is processing all of our testing, is starting to see delays. And DESE had a meeting last week about this. They're aware of it as well, and they recommend that schools who are doing the dual swabs like we are implement reflex testing, which is just the rapid antigen testing to follow up when we do see like a delay in the turnaround time for the results. So we still are hitting around that 48-hour mark. We get at least the positive pool, and then what happens is they conduct all their individual testing after that. So, yeah, I'm not really sure.
Yeah, no, I'm just going to interrupt you. So what we were talking about with this policy is do we need to think about as we move from outdoor sports to indoor sports and outdoor, like the ability for kids to meet with their clubs or their extracurricular activities outdoors rather than indoors. Do we move to a more restrictive pool testing requirement? For example, mandatory pool testing for kids that are in extracurricular activities, so that we can help mitigate a lot of COVID-19 positives and keep kids in school and keep sports teams running and things like that, or not. And we just have to think about, I mean, it was disturbing to listen to Mrs. Mulcahy today talking to us and saying that when they go to see the volleyball team, half the kids have masks on, half don't. Like, that's just not, I mean, our policy is wear a mask, and if that's what indoor sports are gonna look like, we might have some issues over the winter.
Right.
with kids, all the kids being indoors and being in the gym and same thing with theater and the extracurricular just activities after school, like people in the building and sort of being more laid back about the rules and, taking their masks off or doing whatever kids do. We need to sort of start thinking about that as we switch over to the winter season, because we are not close to meeting that threshold of vaccinated people so that we can not wear masks.
What threshold do we know?
80%
Is what they want. What are we at?
What are we at?
So I have to pull it back. We just received, over the past week, we did get a increase of vaccination statuses from individuals who were involved with a case. So those numbers increased, but I'll have to pull it and I can send an email to you guys to let you know.
We're not even halfway there, though.
Yeah, as of like a few weeks ago, I think we were down to like 200 individuals at the high school who have reported their vaccination status. And that was after multiple attempts of trying to get people to submit it.
So do we think they just haven't submitted it?
Yes,
or do you think
we do.
Okay.
We do.
So that's why I was trying to talk to Maggie earlier, because I think we have an issue with, I mean, I know you're emailing people prolifically, like asking them to submit stuff, right? But people aren't doing it, and maybe people aren't vaccinated, but maybe they are and they're not doing it. And also with the pool testing, you know, just, we don't have a lot of people signed up to I think you said 1,400 students out of our 2,200 students?
So right now, for our total district, we have about 1,400 signed up for the general testing. Now, some of those people have selected out of the pool testing part of it. And that's probably about roughly around 20 individuals.
So, I mean, the whole point is if we're gonna do all these mitigation things, we need to have people participating in them to work. So we just have to.
I just feel like that vaccination number is not right.
We agree.
Had a clinic here and more people than that.
We agree, but they need to come forward.
But they're just not filling out the form, or.
You know, one of the things we talked about in our subcommittee was, you know, places, I think you mentioned Natick, right, that had, they've hit their 80%. And, you know, the question I asked was, you know, what did they do to get that information, you know, and again, maybe they took a new approach, you know, vis-a-vis what we did, but, you know, one of the suggestions was, you know, find out what they did, you know, if there's anything we could leverage here, again, just to get that information.
Is maybe and I completely agree with you, John, that let's find out what other people did. It's, you don't want to reinvent the wheel. So the first thing that comes to mind is talking about winter sports, that something should be added to the presentation that all students and parents who participated in winter sports must attend and talk about this very topic. Because, you know, to Suzanne, to your point, we might have to really discuss this. I don't know if you want several hundred people in a gymnasium without any idea of status. I mean, that could potentially cause a problem. And I just think, at least to begin with, that the athletic director add a slide or two about this, potentially bring in another person from the team to discuss this with parents that are there. This would also include, you know, theater and whatever else that the students do in the winter. But with the sports, you have a captive audience. These folks have to be there. They have to sign various forms.
We're just like, we just sort of like up or against, I mean, the winter sports meeting happens, you know, a couple days before the season starts, you know?
Right.
And if we're gonna do something like this, I mean, it has to be, we have to think about it, like, quickly, because.
And they've kind of been virtual and/or sometimes even canceled because it's.
Like, the whole, I mean, so if someone is positive on a team, right, when everyone's pool testing or we're doing test and stay, then that sport gets to keep playing, right? And everyone on the team that's vaccinated gets to keep playing, right? And the person who's not vaccinated, you know, has the risk of having to stay out, right?
Like contest and stay.
Is that flow of information actually happening?
I'm sorry, say that again? So the individuals who are fully vaccinated don't have to either quarantine at home or do the test and stay. However, individuals who are unvaccinated will have to either quarantine at home or be authorized to do our test and stay. The test and stay testing, just as a reminder, is only for in-school close contacts. So if I'm positive at home and my daughter's unvaccinated because she's underage, then realistically she has to quarantine at home. Even though she is a part of the test and stay, she doesn't qualify for the in-school testing.
Right.
And that's because you have to factor in that the school districts have a lot of mitigation tools already in place. So with the data that DESE has collected from last year's testing, they feel like it's a safe way to keep the kids in the school where they need to be.
Right. It just seems like mandating everyone who plays a sport or who stays for an actual school activity, extracurricular, I don't know, at the high school level, maybe at the high school and the middle school level, because I don't think there's any extracurriculars at the elementary. We don't count extent a day.
Right. Are we tracking who was pool tested already in a classroom. So in other words, are you going to be testing the same kid because their class was selected for pool testing and then they're going to be tested again? Because we're already seeing delays, right? So if we're...
So at the elementary school levels, our pools are based off of the classrooms because it's easier to go classroom to classroom to get those pools. So we do have a higher participation in those classes. At the middle school and high school, because of their rotating schedule, we've been doing it in like their homeroom block and having those individuals who are authorized to test to come down to like the cafeteria or the atrium to do the testing.
Because I'm just thinking we don't want to like be double or triple testing people if we're having delays when we're sending the, do you know what I mean? If the company is like slow.
It's not like that, right? Because the kids who are supposed to get tested go down to a certain area at a certain time of day. Like everyone goes like.
I'm just saying if you have a team come down.
So if we were to implement something like this, what we'd probably do is create a pool for that team, and that team or group activity would come down during their homeroom and they would be placed all on a roster that's already pre-pooled and pre-selected.
So they wouldn't be on another roster for something else, like in their homeroom or whatever?
No, I mean, they would only be still getting tested the one time a day. The benefit of it is basically saying that that individual cannot participate in that sport or that after-school activity until they have been tested. And the hope is that this is going to decrease the exposure, which ultimately decreases the amount of, or decreases the learning loss of these individuals, because after-school activities, like last year, and as we're starting to see, is now affecting students being out.
Right. And did we see a lot of cases in this? Well, I mean, we were outdoors, so, but did we see a lot of cases in the sports teams this year?
With the indoor team.
With the indoor team.
Can I say, I'm just a little confused of the numbers, and I certainly don't mean to put you on the spot, and you can get back to me. Let's just take boys soccer, just as an example. And without getting very specific, do we know there are X players in boys soccer, JV and varsity? Do we know the percentage of that or any team's vaccine status?
So we don't at this time, and it's hard because the way that we are collecting the data is a Google form, so we'd have to cross-reference our vaccination list to those teams. And we just honestly haven't done that. We're just trying to get the information in at this point because our contact tracing is heavily based on a vaccination status. So at some point we could probably get to that point, but right now we're not there.
Let me ask it a different way.
Sure.
Let me maybe ask you this question too. Do we have a understanding of the vaccine status of the students in the building? Let's focus on the high school for right now. Do we have an understanding?
We only know those that have provided their vaccination status, and that is about 200.
And that's even for students who are under the age of 18?
Yes.
So I pulled it up, and this data that it might not be accurate because some of this information was from last year into this year. So some seniors were graduated, or individuals who are at the middle school are now at the high school. So that's all the stuff that we still have to clean up this data. But when I pulled it, we had about 225 people submit their vaccination status at the high school and only 78 at the middle school.
That's all we know.
That's all we know.
Okay.
I do anticipate those numbers being a little bit more, but we still have to factor in that although the town is doing great with their vaccination status, we are kind of bound to what is being reported to us at this time.
And I would love to know how Natick did it. I think the school committee should reach out to the school committee and find out how they did it.
It's so unbelievable to me that it's such a, I don't understand the hesitance to tell people or and
you know, our goal is in the nursing department is to try to keep the kids in the school and to keep everybody healthy. And like I was mentioning, like we're really contingent on our families supporting this, the protocols, really calling us, letting us know of individuals who are sick. You know, please do not send your children into school sick. Like, yes, we have all this testing capability, but by you sending a child into the school sick, or by sending a child into the school that you know might have COVID or was exposed to COVID, and not following those protocols, you're now increasing the risk for other people in the school. And that's something that we're still consistently seeing.
And Amanda, I think, just going back to, our conversation this afternoon, I think one of the points or concerns that I raised was, all right, it's I think what you're trying to do is an admirable thing. And my question was, is there data to support this? Is there a trend where we should be alarmed and, we need to do this? It sounds like, we're having a good conversation. Yeah, we should do this. But I'm like, is there a compelling reason for us to do this?
So if we take the last recent case of an after-school activity, that individual came in close contact with at least 4 or 5 other individuals, one who was fully vaccinated and also became positive. So do I feel that there is at least some data that we can start tracking this closely? Absolutely, as these cases come in. But our data that we're getting and pulling these numbers off are really information that people are reporting to us. So they're anecdotal in some way, and if people are not going to help us in this process of truly identifying their close contacts and working with our team, it's not going to be as accurate.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think, we'll see what other communities do going forward, but, the 2 that we talked about, which were Framingham and Salem, very different than Swampscott as far as, the number, the huge population differences than versus Swampscott. So it's not quite the apples to apples comparison. Salem and Framingham are probably very similar, but, compared to Swampscott, they are different.
Yeah, so and the other thing too is like, if we don't have the information from the MIAA yet on how they're going to implement the contact tracing for indoor sports, and that's another component to this, which is contact tracing for athletics is extremely difficult because the type of sport and what team or what, if they play like defense or offense, if those things can factor in it, and we're still waiting for that guidance, which could either make it easier, fingers crossed, but everything so far has been looking to like, it is just basic contact tracing. Right. So we're talking about the potential of it being teams, and that's something that I would really hate to see.
And I think the contact tracing is important, but I'm flabbergasted. I mean, I went to a play in Boston, saw Rent, by the way, which was really good. I had to show proof of vaccine to get in, and there was no kidding around there. They were not kidding around. You didn't show your proof of vaccine, you weren't getting in. Other than, I asked one of the people who was doing, there's a certain age they're doing. I want to say it was 12 below, whatever, that you can't. So I feel for you in trying to get this information. I will just say to the public, just share this information so we can make this learning community better. And without this flow of information, it's really detrimental to the entire community, to be perfectly honest with you.
Well, it feels like, back in grade school where you punish the whole class
right,
for one
exactly,
kid doing something
exactly.
wrong, right?
I completely agree.
And it feels wrong, but it also feels like this is like leverage. Like you can say everyone who does an extracurricular has to do this, right. and then we have more information, but it's like, it doesn't.
It's putting the committee in an awkward position when people should just be responsible.
Well,
and hope and share their status.
Can the email that goes out saying please fill out, if your child is fully vaccinated, please fill out this. Maybe that needs to go out every week because people are still in the process of vaccinating. So maybe that just needs to be something that goes out all the time, because are they going to remember to go find that form?
Telling people we're working towards getting to 80%. So
that's what I mean. So keep filling this out. It comes out every week. This is the link. Just fill it out.
I don't want to go that far, honestly, and I sent that in my communication because we do have concerns with the teachers' unions and unmasking, no matter what schools they're in. I see what you're saying. I just did encourage and say that at this time I'm not looking to reduce the mask mandate even on October 15th.
No, but you could say it's a piece of information we know to even discuss it, right?
Right.
And it's a piece of information we need to know for contact tracing. It's a piece of information we need to know if we're gonna talk about increased pool testing or mandating. Do you know what I mean? So it's just a piece of information that we need to know for all of these reasons, and just ask for it all the time, because it's not something that's either already done or not. Some people are still doing it.
I mean, can you say, just like, can we ask for, doesn't, never mind, I was gonna say.
I mean, I don't know why anybody would not want to share it if it means
I
your
can
child is not
add
a
it
close
into the
contact.
next communication. I mean, I can definitely include it. It was more about consent to testing over the weekend that I sent out, but,
I mean,
I'm not saying it has to come from you. It could come from the schools, each
well,
school.
I'll discuss it with.
Yeah.
but I think like educating the kids about to put pressure on parents to send this in, or to encourage kids to make sure their parents do it or something. It's just like, because, then I don't even know.
I think one of the problems
you can't even
is-
make any promises because you have no idea what's gonna happen.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna add, Suzanne, that I think, I'm always speaking for me here, because I see all these emails coming from the school with, we're announcing, there was a positive case, and there's a lot of those. And I think maybe this request is getting lost in that shuffle.
Maybe.
Right.
And again, that was, going back to earlier conversation, I don't know if Natick's doing something different, that they're standing out and able to get this. I don't know, that's why,
Just one, I'm sorry, John, just one last comment. I mean, if, and I don't even know if this is possible, I'll have to ask you to give me your opinion. If we're talking anyone who's an extracurricular, who's a senior, who is over 18, they can sign their own form.
Well, yeah, but
Why can't we just call them down in the office and say, will you fill this out? Now, we can't make them, obviously, but will you fill this out? And I'm asking, you can tell me that that can't happen, and that's completely understandable.
I wish the high school principal were here. These are challenging times, and I don't know, everybody is doing so much, and the year is not any easier than I expect it to be. The first thought that comes to mind is, who's gonna manage that? And I don't know that we have the capacity to manage that. I think it could be getting lost in the messaging of the consent to test and all of that stuff, and the test and stay. So let's try to isolate it and send another communication and see what happens. That's where I'll leave it for now.
And I think in the meantime, just to go back to something that I think, Suzanne, you mentioned earlier, just about half the volleyball team wearing masks, half not wearing masks, just about, enforcing the current protocols. So, maybe we don't get to the point where, Amanda comes in and it's like, we get a huge problem. If they're actually being enforced now, that might be at least a first step here to focus on compliance.
Yeah, coaches should be.
I don't know why, it's really upsetting to me to hear that, because I don't know in what world in the Swampscott Public Schools any adult would think that was okay.
Right.
So I have a problem with that, and that will start with the athletic director to the coaches.
Well, let me just say that Kelly and myself, we have spoken to the teams as well when it's been brought to our attention, and I think that unfortunately it's just still not being.
I think so we just have to decide as a committee what we're, like, are we gonna try to, I don't know what the deadlines are for winter sports or getting something, the ball rolling, but I think we have to really think about, like, what's our threshold, what's the trigger, what's the threshold for doing something, at the emergency town meeting, weekly town meeting, you heard that there was 30 cases in Swampscott, up from 20 last week. That puts us in the red in Swampscott. It's not necessarily, reflective of what's happening here, but it's not it's definitely not a positive trend. And the fact that the vaccine, I don't know. There's so many, what's the threshold here that we're gonna pull the trigger on mandating pool testing or mandating vaccination statuses from athletes and extracurricular.
I don't think there has to be a threshold. I think the committee has to make a decision that we're going indoors, and if these are privileges to participate in extracurricular and sports, then is the committee going to decide, regardless of a threshold, that this is what the committee wants to do to keep everybody safe?
No one's arguing. I mean, I agree with you. I would pull the trigger today just to say it, and I just don't. I want to hear someone tell me what's the negative about pool testing. Why are people resistant to signing up for it, or why is there pushback against doing it?
Amanda and I have talked about this recently. One of the pieces of feedback we're getting, and with anything new, you hit bumps. The delay in getting the identification of the positive is causing people anxiety, which is where this reflex testing comes in now. And this is something we're putting in because if we hit it says 24 to 48 hours, but if we're going beyond that 48 hours, I even say if at 24 hours we don't have the identification of that positive test, then we reflex test. We have the Buy Next Now test. We have plenty of them. 15 minutes we're going to know who to identify it. I think that has been a hiccup that we've come across, and I think for some parents, they need to be notified that now your child has been pulled out for pool testing, which takes no time at all. But now they're going to be pulled out for another test for 15 minutes out of academics in order to identify who that is. And I don't think parents are on board with that. A lot of parents, but
I mean, it does.
I don't know. I mean, it's still, for whatever reason, the parent might not like it. It's still, now, if the parent says, no, I don't want my kid tested, that's still a kid, right? That can't then play. That can't, right? And we're talking about social, emotional, there's a lot people are dealing with, and now you get a kid that literally can't play.
But on the other hand, if that kid gets to play and the team gets infected or someone, I mean, it's.
I know.
There's no,
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand the other side. I'm sorry. I don't. I think one of you guys had mentioned extracurricular is a privilege. It's a privilege. And especially with going, you're right, it's going to be indoors. And again, I just wish the parents would get on board. It seems to be the easiest thing to do. It's I don't know. It's an easy.
So where are we leaving this right now?
I know,
Are we coming back? Are we supposed to come back and do a first read?
Yeah, we don't have a policy. I mean, we didn't write anything out. We don't have an exemplar policy from anyone. I mean, it's definitely looking at getting Salem and Framingham's and seeing what actually I saw Salem's, but no, saw Framingham's. I'm sorry, and it's much more than we need. But I think we can draft something and then put this discussion on, and if we feel like having a first read of a policy next time, and maybe we can have some up-to-date numbers to what's happening, indoor versus outdoor teams maybe, or something for what's happening in the fall, to just sort of give us a picture of what might happen in the winter. I don't know. I mean, we definitely have to revisit this because obviously.
Well, right, because it's getting.
And I think we all need to do a little research on our own, to sort of look into what other districts are doing, certainly how they're communicating mandates, and if people are not having mandates for fall sports, but might be putting them in for indoor sports. Probably seems like something that will be happening in other districts as well. So anyway, so that'll be on the agenda for next week, and John, maybe you and I can look at some different policies and try to put together something simple that just addresses this, not like Framingham's 4 pages.
Can I, Suzanne, just to let the committee know, I'll be attending the Swampscott Special Education Parent Advisory Council meeting tomorrow evening.
Oh, good.
Just as a FYI.
Thank you. So we're just going to move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda is designed to expedite the handling of routine and miscellaneous business of the district. The school committee may adopt the entire consent agenda with one motion. At the request of any committee member, any items may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda for discussion. Can someone make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Thanks, John. Any discussion? There's an executive session minute, a regular session minute, a donation from Staples. It looked like a box of school supplies to the middle school, and then a donation from Blue Anchor Millwork, which is in Marblehead. Looks like some wood for the advanced manufacturing program.
Nice.
So no discussion. Motion to accept.
Aye.
Second.
All those in favor? Karen?
Yes.
Yes.
John? Glenn?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well, so that's past that. And Pam, is there anyone in participants still that might want to?
We have 4 participants.
Anyone out there want to speak? We don't have an advanced
We
sign-up
have
sheet, so if you
Claire
want.
Beckett has raised her hand.
Oh,
I will
super.
promote to panelists.
Who is
so
it?
that- Claire Beckett.
All right, so Claire Beckett, you have the floor.
Let me see if I can.
Not quite yet.
I think I just moved her over. Yep.
Yep, so you should be able to speak now.
Can you hear me okay?
We
Yes,
can, thank you.
thank you.
Okay, so I'm already wearing my pajamas, so I'm not going to turn on my camera. Sorry about that. I'm the parent of a 2nd grader at Clark School, and I just wanted to make like brief mention of the pool testing and is related to both regulars of school day and the aftercare situation. So we had a situation this week where somebody in the after school program tested positive for COVID, and so like pretty much all the kids that go to the aftercare were close contacts. So that's like, I don't know how many, 50 or 60 kids. And so what's great about that is that for my daughter, we had signed up for test and stay. So she was able to go to school today and be tested and stay at school, which is a huge improvement over last year, where she would have been home for, I don't know, like a week or something. So my question, or the topic I just wanted to raise, is that I would really like to see the test and stay extended into the extended AY program. So the extended day is shut down for a full week now, and it seems kind of like it fell into a crack in terms of like who's responsible and why this happened, and like I got various explanations from the why about it, but I get that there's a need to protect health of our children, and I totally support that. But if we worked out test and stay for 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., I don't see how we can't make that happen for the aftercare part of the day. It's the same kids at the same building, and I don't need to explain to you what a huge disruption it is to have aftercare disappear for 50 to 60 families. And you know, you could make an argument that like extracurricular activities are extra things, that they don't have to be part of the school day, but you really can't make an argument that extended day is not a necessary part of the school day. Like for working families, you need a place for your kid to be that's safe. And when you find out, as we did in my family yesterday, that you should pick your kid up at 2:10 and I get the phone call at like 2:30, that's kind of last minute and kind of disruptive. So again, I'm not at all interested in pointing blame at any of the people involved, but more like, how can we get to a test and stay situation for the extended day program?
So with the permission of the chair, I know we're not supposed to respond to public comment, but Ms. Beckett, thank you for bringing this forward. A little bit background, and Mrs. Mulcahy can speak to this as well. So I got a call yesterday about the situation that we were going to quarantine 47 students from Clark School because they were all close contacts at the YMCA and at the extended day program. And I had an emergency meeting, Zoom meeting, with Mrs. Mulcahy, Mrs. Shea, and Mrs. Hudson. And because the Board of Health considered this a community event, they were advising that all 47 kids quarantine for the rest of the week. You can imagine that I hit the roof, that there is no way, when we are promoting the fact and proud of the fact that we are participating in these 3 modes of testing, that I was going to allow 47 kids to quarantine, whether they were in the YMCA program or they were in our schools. And you can split hairs and say this was a community event, but there are students. And so I made the decision that it was the common sense thing to do to look at who had consent to testing, to line them up in the gymnasium the way they did this morning. They whipped out that testing as soon as they could, and I think 36 kids were able to stay in the building rather than quarantine for 3 days. So a couple of things. I was supposed to connect with the YMCA executive director today because the legal answer to your question is they cannot participate in Test and Stay because they are not under the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. I think in lots of ways, a lot of people have lost common sense during this global pandemic, and I say this daily, and I think common sense says to me, if this is a vendor in our schools with our children, then they should fall under our umbrella. And that's what I'm pursuing now with the executive director and the leader of the extended day programs. I just didn't get to that phone call today. So your public comment is very timely, but there is common sense that needs to be applied to a lot of situations, and certainly quarantining 47 kids for 3 days was not going to happen on my watch. So I appreciate your comment. I hope I was able to give you a little insight that we are pursuing it, that extended day is a different activity, and also the fact that they're in all one location in the gymnasium at Clark School. I think we need to break them up into different classrooms. Mrs. Shea is working on that as well. So just know we're working on it, and I appreciate your comment.
Thank you. I appreciate hearing a little bit more of the story.
You know what's really interesting just about that is that just doing the quick arithmetic, it's about 75% of those kids, those families, made the decision to have their kids attend school today. And I think that's pretty powerful.
And of those 36 tested,
Sure.
there wasn't one positive.
Perfect.
Right.
I mean, but that's exactly to Ms. Beckett's point, and to the point we've all been making. You signed up for the pool testing as a family. There was a challenge in this particular group. The challenge was identified. You made a very great decision. And today, rather than have 46 families who were disrupted, and I completely remember and understand what Ms. Beckett was talking about, 75% of those families had zero disruption.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a pretty powerful statement.
We were pretty pleased. I mean, it was a proud moment for us, not to mention the amount of staff that went over there to expedite the testing, the communication that went home about parents needed to be on call for about an hour because the 15 minutes would determine whether or not the kids were positive. But the fact that 36 were test and stay, not one positive came out of that, was a real win for us.
So I don't understand why the Y couldn't have the program with those 36 kids in it.
They said that I haven't had that discussion.
No, but I'm saying,
Because you're probably not even allowed to share that data, right? Because it's medical, like.
That's an interesting point, too.
I haven't had the conversation with them yet.
But that's what she's speaking to.
I understand,
like,
but that's the piece that's missing.
Right.
I didn't get to follow up with a conversation today with them.
Like that's what we need to
They
understand.
made that decision,
Right.
but the calls were going out so late to these parents,
Right.
it made me cringe. But I have to have that conversation, and it hasn't been had yet.
Yeah,
So that's to be continued.
I think that's really important to
If
say.
36 were not positive and were test and stayed, why couldn't the program open with those 36 kids?
Right, and the kids that weren't,
That didn't test.
couldn't test, whatever, that's one of the benefits of enrolling in the pool testing, that you have this.
It's not just the pool testing, it's the test and stay.
It's the test and stay.
I think there's multiple things that factored into this too. Not knowing all the close contacts that were identified that were not just our students. There could have been staff also who were identified, and knowing who knows what their vaccination status is. So I'm sure there was multiple reasons, but the information that we received was that at least 36 of our students that were involved in our testing that could have stayed, And
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that these things are going to happen for the first time because everything is happening for the first time.
Right.
And then you're on top of it right away and figuring it
For the
out.
next time.
You know, it's just hard because it is a disruption for lots of people, and I can't even imagine what it's like to pick up your kid at 2:10 when it's not even.
No, as a single working mother, when my child was little, I
Exactly.
depended on that more than you can possibly imagine.
Of course.
So I wish I got to that conversation with the WISE personnel today. I did not. I will get on it, and I will bring it back to the school
All right,
committee.
we're going to let you go home and go to bed so that you can get on it tomorrow. All right, I think that's it. If someone wants to make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those, well, actually roll call, right? John?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Glenn?
Yep.
Myself is yes. So the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Amy, if you're listening.